Okay, good evening. This is our monthly Rural Leavenworth Inc. Board of Directors meeting, and we have a guest speaker tonight. Her name is TerriLois Mashburn. The topic is how a bill becomes a law, and also how to effectively communicate with elected or appointed officials. So I'm going to turn the program over to TerriLois. And Terry, if you would like, TerriLois, if you'd like to do a brief introduction about your current responsibilities, that would be fine before we jump into the slides.
No, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate being able to share. I am Register of Deeds for Leavenworth County. I was elected in 2020. I started my term in 21, and that'll run through 24. And then the elections will be November of 24. And if I'm reelected, then I will go again in January of 25. And my function is land records. So we have been doing a scanning project, because in order to access a lot of our older records, it's microfilm, which is 50-year-old technology. It's scratchy. It's very hard to read. It's cumbersome to get to it. And by scanning all of our old records, we are now going to have digitally enhanced documents that look almost brand new, and you'll be able to access them online. We have received 52,000 of the 375,000 plus that we are supposed to receive. And we are actively back indexing those so that you can search online by the date the document was recorded, by the date of the document itself, the grantor, the grantee, the legal description, and where we have it, we call it 911 address. If you're going to mail a letter, 123 Main Street, we're adding that in too. We also do financial recordings, UCCs. We do mortgages, mortgage releases, those type of documents. And I can't do a speech without mentioning property fraud alert. If you don't know what that is, please call my office. It's 913-684-0424. And I'd love to tell you about it. It's a free service. It keeps you updated on what is happening with your property, whether legal or illegal. We don't determine any recordings at all. You're notified, and then you determine, was this a legitimate recording or was this an attempt at title theft? So I'm just going to jump right in, and Sherry, if you want to bring up that first document, how a bill becomes law. Let's see. So there in the Kansas legislature, there are two houses. We have the House of Representatives, and then we have the Senate. And you hear a representative or a senator say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. He won't do anything without 62 of his buddies in the House and without 20 of his buddies in the Senate, because you have to have a majority to get anything passed in either house. So the House of Origin, whichever house you want to, the bill is introduced. The bill is usually composed by revisers that work in the Capitol. A lot of the legislators will start working maybe as early as August or September for bills to be what they call in the hopper. And if I use a phrase you don't understand, please, stop me. But so when those bills are introduced, they get read into the committee as a whole, and then they are parsed out based on the content of what the idea is behind the bill, and they will be referred to Fed and State, or the Insurance Committee, or the Children and Family Issues Committee, whatever it might be, where the bill is dissected, and conferees are invited to come and testify. You can be in favor or against it. If you want to testify on a bill, you want to be concise, but you also want to be polite, especially if you're antagonistic towards the bill. You keep in mind that these are the people who are going to vote. So you don't want to go in there with guns blazing and expect them to be on your side. You need to be cordial enough to vocalize why you are in opposition to that. And you might be surprised at how many times the conferee can change the mind of a legislator. So when the bill is in the committee, you can have amendments to the bill before it's voted out of committee. Then it goes back to what is called the committee of the whole. So any bills that are read in the floor and debated on the floor, that's the committee of the whole. There are amendments that may be added on to it. I encourage you, if you don't know, learn the difference between the bill itself and the amendment, because the newspapers love to say representative voted in favor of this and it was horrible. Well, maybe they voted in favor of an amendment that would minimize collateral damage in the bill. But the vote on the amendment and the vote on the bill are two different things. And you have to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. But I have some examples later on I'm going to show you of, the spectrum of reporting. And if one newspaper tilts one way, go out of your way to find the opposite view. And so you kind of get more of the entire idea of what's going on with the bill. If the bill passes, it needs to have 63 votes in the House to be voted out. And then the message is sent over to the Senate that we have passed the bill and we are giving them the bill to look at. So if you don't know whether it's a Senate or a House bill, Senate bills are going to be 2-3 digits. House bills are going to be 4 digits. House bills are going to be preceded by HB, House bill, and Senate bills are going to be SB, Senate bill. Then the second House, which is the Senate, I'm saying this starts in the House of Representatives, but the bill can start in the Senate and then come over to the House. So pretty much those steps are repeated in the Senate. They receive the bill, it's read in, then it's parsed out to whichever committee. That committee goes through, looks at it, and if they pass the House bill exactly as it came to them, it's a miracle. Write it down, go buy a lottery ticket, because they always are going to want to amend something to it. So a comma, if an and is changed to an or, it's not the same bill. It has to be exactly the same bill. And when they can't agree on it, then they will have a joint committee where they hammer out, well, I'll give up this if you give me that. And the Senate says, no, we have to have this, but we'll give up this if you let us have this one piece. So this goes back and forth quite a bit. And lots of game playing, I think, but the two houses have to agree and they have to pass it. Once they pass it, then it goes on to the governor. The governor has options. If she agrees with the content of the bill, she can sign it into law. And there's this big production where all these people are standing behind her that helped to get the bill to her desk, and she hands away the pins, ceremonial pins that she signed the bill with, pictures and all that kind of stuff. Or there is a situation where she doesn't agree with the content of the bill, and she knows that there is enough to, if she vetoed it, there would be enough to override her, and you don't like to be overridden. And so it's just set aside. And if enough time passes, then the bill becomes law without a signature. Or she can veto it. When she vetoes it, it goes back to each chamber. Then the House has to have 84 votes to override. And the Senate has to have 27 votes to override the veto. And this is real interesting. One of the one of the situations I'm going to show you, you can tell how it is, because the Capitol Journal says that the veto was narrowly overridden. And then another, it was a blog article, but I thought it was written very well. That one says it was passed, let's see, with an impressive 85, 39, and 39 voting record. So look at the adjectives, and again, when you're looking at these things, judge at it. There's a whole lot more details to how a bill becomes law. Some of the games are, if you look at the House Journal or the Senate Journal, there's a list of bills, and then there's this line, and then there's a whole lot of other bills. So when the bill is above the line, and that's the phrase that they use, there's going to be action. There's going to be voting on that particular bill that day. It has to be above the line. So there's a pre-vote, and then there's the final action. So if you ever are in the House, or if you're ever watching the House and it looks like utter chaos, it really does. But as soon as it's final action, you can hear a pin drop. Everybody's in their seat, everybody is quiet, and the final action is the vote that moves it. Either it dies or it moves over to the other chamber. And if you're the second house, then it goes up to the governor. So Sherry, I'm going to change up. Instead of going to what I said was the second page, if you'll go to the last page. One thing I want to point out about Kansas is we are very unique in that a citizen can actually bring a bill to the legislature to be acted on. Now, you don't just walk up there and throw it in. You have to have found sort of like a sponsor. You would be allowed to present the bill if the chair of whatever committee is allowing you to come in. And so in certain instances, you've tried to get relief from whatever your problem is, and nobody is helping you, nobody's paying attention to you. And so literally Melissa Campbell out of Olathe created and presented a bill, and that bill actually passed. It's really fascinating. If you want to look at it, it's HB 2138. And so she was on a school trip 1,000 miles from home. All of a sudden she was told, you are going to be sharing a bed, not just a room, you are going to be sharing a bed with a biological male who identifies as a female. And she said, no, I'm not. And they basically said, deal with it. So she got no relief from the school, from the adults who were sponsoring that trip. And when she came back, they successfully pushed that bill all the way through. That's a very long conversation, but I'm fascinated with Kansas that we still are one of the only states in the union that a citizen can present a bill, and this is one that went through. So I encourage you to look up HB 2138. Sherry asked me to talk about communications with the officials. So even though you want to call them everything, but a polite citizen, if you want their help, you can't do that. You have to have decorum. Screaming at them, calling them an idiot isn't going to help your cause. Sadly, I wrote, I'm Republican, and I during the map making session for the census, I wrote Senator Pittman, and I said, I realize you have a lot more information than what I'm privy to. All that I'm asking is that you please do what's best for the state of Kansas. And thanked him for his service and left it at that. He told me later, he said, you're the only Republican that wrote me. That I was flabbergasted at that. And I don't know, I probably, having been a state representative, I'm probably a lot more aware of all the hate mail that you get. You get a lot of hate mail, you don't get a lot of love mail. So if your representative or your senator does something that you appreciate and you can acknowledge, by all means, write them. If you write them some good letters, they're not quite so apt to just, trash it, throw it in there. But I will tell you, very, very few representatives read every single email that comes in. It's just physically impossible with the time constraints of such a short session and the volume that they get. So what they do look at is, here's a topic, and I got 20 emails on it. And when I was in the House, we kind of used this ratio. For every email that I got, I would count 10 people held that same view. For every letter that I got, I held 20 people had that same issue. For every person that saw me in person, came, took the time to come to Topeka and make an appointment in my office, I counted 50 people had that same value. So if I get 800 emails, you better believe I'm going to be paying attention to it. They do look at numbers. A lot of organizations send out a stock letter, crisis, write your representative, and here's the letter. Do not send that letter. I mean, change it up, use the content of it, make it your own words, change up the paragraphs or whatever, because by the time you get the 50th block letter that you've already seen, you don't really pay attention to it so much. So they'll give you a subject line. Don't use that subject line. Put your own words in there, and do be genuine. I mean, don't fluff them. They can see that too. When you're mad, just be cordial in your disagreement. You don't have to be disagreeable to disagree. That's the one thing I want to say is puffing up and screaming and yelling is just going to go against you. I'm going to go with the Leavenworth County Commissioners. 2 people can have a discussion, and that's fine, who sit on the board. 3 people is a quorum, and they can't do that. So if you have an issue and you write all 5 commissioners, out of respect, Vicky Cause is not going to reply to you. Jeff Culbertson is not going to reply to you. Probably Doug Smith and Mike Stephen are going to reply to you because you're in their district or you're close. You're in their area. And so it has legal ramifications for the board if they jump in on all emails and on all topics. So it isn't that they don't care or they don't think you're worth their time or whatever. They literally are deferring to who the commissioner is that's in your area, so that they're not getting him in Dutch by creating this, it's a the term slips me, but creating a quorum because 3 commissioners have been in the email chains and relaying back and forth.
I have a question, TerriLois.
Sure.
So let's say citizens, me or whoever, has some suggestions and it's not specifically related to a weekly meeting agenda. Do you think it's more effective to show up and provide comment at the weekly meeting at the tail end? Well, I guess it's now at the no, it's
beginning.
Still beginning. I can't keep track. Or to put that in writing and send it to all of them, or just pick one of them and send the suggestions to and hope that the one does something with the letter or the comments.
I would encourage a lot broader attack, if you will. Take the time to compose a letter and don't blast off the first thing you write. Set it aside, come back, rewrite it, ask somebody to review it, use Grammarly, whatever. And as concise as you can, get the thoughts down on paper, and then handwrite the address and mail it to the commissioner. Then take a little bit different tack. Don't do the exact same duplicate. Put it in an email and send it. So the commissioners will probably read it, but like I said, not all of them are going to respond to it. And then you have to sign up. It's 3 minutes only. And it really does you well to respect that 3-minute limit. If they have to sit there and cut you off, and you can tell, they just watch the body language. They can, you know, one of them sits there and twitches like this, and the other one starts going like this. And respect the 3-minute limit. They're in place for a reason. And also recruit other people. The best thing that I have ever seen is it was the Easton dump. And there was maybe 15 people, and they all signed up for 3 minutes. And the first person walked up with the written manifesto and read for 3 minutes. And at 3 minutes, he turned around and walked away. And the next person walked up and literally started on the next point. It doesn't do you any good if 5 people covered the exact same point and just beat the dead horse. So if you have a team and everybody kind of spreads it out, you can carry on a message that way. Be respectful of their time. They have families, they have a home life, all that kind of stuff. If you can request a meeting time with them, every once in a while, it just happens. You show up and you come in and you have a meeting. That happens with me all the time. I have an open door and I have 16 things to do, and someone comes in and wants to chat for 45 minutes. I'm going to chat, you know, because my philosophy is I am a servant. I'm not queen because I was elected Register of Deeds. I'm now a servant to 8,200 people, 82,000 people that live in the county. But I really appreciate it when someone gives me a heads up and they want 15 minutes of my time. What is it? I can be prepared. Maybe I have documents already for them. So just, you know, the golden rule, treat them like you would like to be treated if you had to make decisions that affected everyone else's lives.
We have one question from Steve. He has his hand up.
Okay.
Steve, you're on mute.
There it is. This has to do with your current job, not necessarily the legislature. How prevalent is title fraud or any other kind of property fraud in Leavenworth County or the state of Kansas generally?
So we've had 25 cases since I took office in January of 21, either attempted or completed. And I lobbied personally with the Kansas State Legislature for 2 things. One was for stiffer penalties, because literally it was a slap on the wrist. Oh, I got caught in Leavenworth County. Let's go down to Chase and try it. There just was no teeth in it. But in session 2022, SB 300 was passed, which modified the definition of the RICO Act, and RICO is organized crime. It amended the definition to be an individual using identity theft for property theft can now be charged under the RICO Act. So there's some serious penalties that can be applied to it. The second thing that I asked for and have not gotten, because I literally have no support from the Register of Deeds Association. I have no problems going over and above. Here's the box that says you're a Register of Deeds, but if I go up here, maybe I can protect a citizen and it's a little bit of extra work. I don't mind that. But I wanted the ability as Register of Deeds to set aside a document for 5 days. If I felt like it was fraud or something just wasn't mapping out, I wanted the ability to have research time to track down the original owner. But the Kansas statute says, if you bring me a document and it's properly executed, by law, I have to record that document. Even if I know it's fraud, I can't not record it. And that's the one thing that in this day and age, it doesn't make sense to me. So there's a couple of little things that legally I can do. And I know for a fact I've probably stopped 5 fraud attempts. Now, the good news is we have over 15,000 people who have subscribed to Property Fraud Alert, and that's exponential factor. As people are out in the public and they're talking about it and they are sharing with someone, the bad guys are hearing about it. And so I'm getting longer and longer spans before I get a fraud case reported.
Steve, do you have another question? Your hand's still up.
Yeah, I just put it back up. Could you, Sherry, could you put that link that Terry just talked about in the minutes or the notes from this
Sure.
meeting? So
You're talking
and
about the
maybe even put something like that on our webpage?
The Property Fraud Alert?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Love to have that out there. Okay, so then kind of quickly, I'm going to go through the federal side of it in Congress. So a representative is a state level and a congressman is only federal level. Although we have a U.S. representative, Jake LaTurner, he's a congressman, but we don't have Congressman Pat Proctor. They both are representatives, but only federal is congressman. And all the bills initiate in the House. So that's a little bit different. And whereas Kansas will pre-file a bill, the House of Representatives has a hopper. The bills have to go into that. And then once it's pretty similar to Kansas, but once they pass over, they can vote one of 3 ways. Via voce, which is a voice vote. They can vote by division, which is they open up the rolls and they can stand and they can stand for their vote. If a voice vote is very close, well, I know House rules. House rules, 10 members can call for division, and then you have to vote. And in the House, it's an electronic vote and the board lights up if you've ever seen the House of Representatives. In the Congressional House, they can stand and be counted, or then it can be recorded. And they have buttons to electronically record like we do. In the Senate, they have no accountability. It's a voice vote, I think. And then they talk about how it goes to the bills are debated and they agree or disagree with it, and they can make changes, which me in my cynical way, I read that as, how much pork can we stuff into this bill? The one thing I hate, I don't care state or federal level, I hate omnibus. I hate those with the passion, because you can have 4 things that you absolutely love about that bill, and then someone throws an amendment on, which is something you just absolutely hate. So now then you're in that dilemma. Do I help pass this thing that I hate in order for the good of those other 4 parts of that bill to get through? And it happens all the time. So, when you get those cards and mailers and this guy's a skunk because he voted yes or no on this bill, you have to do some research, because he may have voted for an amendment, and then he may have voted against an amendment, but the amendment got on. And then the amendment was so bad, you have to vote no on a bill that you carried. That happened to me. I couldn't, the base bill was good, but once the amendment went on, nope, I'm not going to help that go through. So don't just take what you read, without doing some research.
Eric has a question.
Okay.
Hi, TerriLois. Thanks again for taking time to be with us this evening.
You're
and
welcome.
Enjoyed our conversation this afternoon at the Law Day ceremony. And also thank you for Fraud Alert. I think that's a really important program. I've read some of the horror stories that can go on with property title fraud and things. And I think it's a good program.
Now, can I
as I
interrupt?
meant-
Can I interrupt
Yeah.
just a second? What Eric did is picture perfect. When you are talking to a person in an elected position, figure out what they've done that you like and thank them for doing that. It lets them know, hey, this guy isn't so bad. And it opens up their mind, and they're going to be able to hear what comes afterwards, after the compliments, and then comes, but Eric did that perfectly. So I want to point out that's what you want to do with elected officials. Okay, sorry, Eric, go ahead with your question.
Thanks, TerriLois. But no, just wanted to ask your opinion. I've been advocating for the last couple of years about budget transparency in the proposed budgets for the Board of County Commissioners. Understanding property tax isn't just county level taxes or school boards and the like, but it seems like meeting some inertia and some resistance. And what I'm asking is just that the proposed budget documents that have the details of what tax money is proposed to be spent on, the book that the commissioners get, be made available to the public. And wanted to ask you, what do you think is the dynamics there? Why would that be meeting inertia or resistance?
I don't think that it is, Eric. I'm very proud of our county commissioners. I don't agree with any one of them 100% of the time, but as a body, I mean, you are looking at 5 very diligent, hardworking individuals. Whoever started this, they work half a day a week, is ludicrous. I work weekends and I see commissioners' trucks and cars out there, and they're coming in answering emails. But okay, so back to your question. This county has operated at revenue neutral for years. They have either reduced the mill or kept the mill even, I think 14 years, and which is phenomenal because Leavenworth is very unique. There's $3 billion worth of land that we cannot tax. You know what that means to you and me? What that means is that 100% of the tax has to be paid in order for services to be provided. Since 35% of our lands can't be taxed, it's either federal prisons or the fort or schools or churches. That means 65% of us are paying the 100% bill. And they have cut and reduced and tried to come up with alternate ways. The Cushing Hospital is a good example to save rent. They consolidated all these agencies that they used to be paying rent into that building. And so now those agencies pay utility charges and they pay no rent, but they got that building for $1. Now, obviously all the renovations, it didn't cost $1, but they have worked very hard at being open and transparent. They just recently made all of the work sessions televised, and all of our budget information is out there and available. FOIA, Freedom of Information requests. I get FOIA requests all the time. When I ran my campaign, one of the things that bothered me was as a citizen, and I saw individuals in the Register of Deeds office getting $30,000 raise, a raise of $30,000 in 1 year. I said, that's ludicrous. I disagreed with it, but I got that information through the Freedom of Information Act. So anything that the county has done, the budget, it's a very long process for us to create the annual budget, and my 2024 budget has to be completed in May. So I'm in my last like week and a half of preparing my budget. So then we are going and presenting that. You can watch the work sessions, and each department is presenting their piece of the budget and listening to commissioners ask you, why do you need that money? Then if you don't see or you don't hear what you want, write the FOIA request, because we're required to respond to it.
But does that cost money to do a request?
It can. So when someone gives me a FOIA request for a deed, we are allowed by law to charge reasonable charges. And so if you came in, Sherry, and said, I want to know the deed, give me the deed to, this property over here, I'm looking at maybe buying it, I'd charge you $7. So a FOIA request, I charge them $7 for that particular deed. And I don't know the other department's charges. You'd have to ask that. It can cost, and you're informed of what the charges would be before they fulfill your request.
I think
Terry,
Eric's example. Go ahead,
Go
Eric.
ahead, sure.
I
Go ahead.
was just gonna say Eric's example is a pretty good one, because we know there will be some budget hearings coming up, down a couple months. And, we see what's published in the newspaper. It's pretty high level.
It is.
But as a citizen, if you want to participate in the budget hearing, you're not really equipped with much to go on if you just use what's been published in the paper. And then when you look at some of the other counties, throughout the state of Kansas, there are varying levels of detail that they publish and make available to the public on their own websites. Wyandotte County has something very elaborate, drop downs and drill downs, and I don't know how they do that, but it looks great. And I think it's Riley County, and just different counties have different levels of information. So it somewhat feels like from Leavenworth, here in Leavenworth County, we have limited information as a citizen to be able to properly to respond with any suggestions or anything in the budget hearing process. So, I appreciate what Eric's done to go speak to the Board of County Commissioners and try to get some increased transparency or more information published. Work sessions are televised, and that's wonderful. I love it. But even then, when you listen in the work session, the citizens can't see the documents that the commissioners are looking at or the department heads. So we can hear the questions. But I guess in a roundabout way, I'm saying I support what Eric's saying, and that's a good example.
Well, I know when I went before the county commissioners with I call it my vision book, my third week in office, here's what I see as a problem. Here's my solution. This is what I plan to implement. And I went through about 4 or 5 things, and each commissioner got a book. And then I had an extra book, and I walked over to John, what's his name? Reichmeyer with the Leavenworth Times, the very quiet guy. And I gave him a copy of it. So actually the budget process this year is different. We've never gone before the board. I'm department head. I submit my budget to the county clerk, and then she would consolidate everything. So I actually don't quite know what to expect in these budget hearings, but I have a very detailed sheet on this line item is $25,000. And then I have all of my breakdown that when they ask questions, I can substantiate why I'm going to spend $25,000 in this category. And if anybody came in and wanted to see my budget, it's a mess right now because we haven't finalized it. So we go defend our budget, then the county commission is going to say, no, we expect you to cut 5%, 12%. I don't know what they're going to say, but I will say Wyandotte County doesn't have 35% of their property that they can't tax. And so they have a lot more money that they can spend on software and all that kind of thing. Whereas Leavenworth County should be replacing 3 bridges a year, and we only have the money to replace 1 bridge a year. So there's no fluff. We are not spending money on, $50,000 or $200,000, whatever it is, to have that fancy software I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying.
But I mean, Wyandotte was just one example.
Well,
Riley County is another that has a lot more detail. But whether we agree that spending is where it should be or shouldn't be, the issue is the level of transparency about where the money is, how it is being spent, not necessarily. I mean, everybody might agree if they saw the level of detail. So it's a transparency issue, not necessarily the agree or disagree with what is being spent.
Well, I know, I know my office, obviously intimately, and I'll just give you an example. I had you have to make accommodations when there's physical limitations. And so this employee said they wanted a standing desk. And I started online doing research for one of those pop-up desks, and it was just ludicrous. It was a board and 2 springs, and they wanted $400. And I said, you know what? I've got wood at home and I've got time this weekend. And I literally built a standing desk, and I spent, instead of $492, I spent $14 and some odd cents for the paint. And I donated the wood, and I donated my time to make, literally, I don't make a quill purchase until all of the coupons and all of the sale items match up, and I can take advantage of the sale. And I'm not the only one doing that. But if the original military discount, for disabled veterans, if in its original form that would have passed and not as part of the Homestead Act, I literally would have to fire 1 person in my office. And we only have 3 people. Myself and three staffers. That's pretty lean for the amount of work that we do. And I don't, I will say, in all honesty, there's one department that maybe there's some duffers in there, but at the same time, I don't intimately know their workflow. And so maybe I just happen to walk in on the downtime, and I'm not there when they are, cranking at full speed. I don't know. I really feel like this county is doing everything that we can to provide the best service we can with very limited resources, and they are going down. My income from the fees is at this point half of what it was in 2021. The recordings are drastically down because of the economy. At the same time, the county is facing like 64% increase in fuel costs, 30-some% increase in asphalt, and it just goes on and on and on. I was able to buy paper $18, $19 a carton. And I just looked and saw the other day, it was $72 for a carton of paper. So
If I could jump in for just a second, I know Steve's got his hand up too. I think Sherry made the case I'm advocating for better than I could, but I will add one comment. I think increased budget transparency, making publicly available on the county's website the submissions that you as the Register of Deeds or the other department heads have will probably make more allies amongst taxpayers than the current system where, you know, everybody gets their tax bill, they get fired up, they get kind of angry and emotional, and they go to the revenue neutral meeting and the BOCC or somebody calls up 2 deputies because it's getting emotional and there's more heat than light. I think if you would make, and I know it's not your decision alone, but if those budget submissions and the narratives were made available to the public, they would see why the money's being spent the way it is. Yeah, we might have some suggestions or say, hey, your priorities don't align with ours as taxpayers on this or that or the other thing. But, you know, just a case in point, the fraud alert, you know, a guy like me looks at that, and I've seen, again, the horror stories that come with fraud and paper terrorism and all that sort of stuff. And I'd say, yeah, that's worth paying a little bit extra for. Just wanted to throw that in there. I don't think it's as threatening as maybe some people in the county court think it is.
well, I mean, you gave me an idea, because I think I can, once I get my budget finalized, I can contact IT and ask them if they'll insert another, you know, slot for my budget.
Mhm.
So I can post my budget paperwork out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I can do that, and maybe other departments will follow suit.
I think that's a
Well-
good idea, is that you're going to lead by example. So
Thank you, Steve. And Alex. Oh, Steve, I don't know. I just now saw what you were talking about. You say his hand is up, and so Steve's hand is up.
and we do need to wrap up for TerriLois here so she can
Okay.
move on here.
Very
but
quickly,
Steve
if I
has a
might.
question. Sure.
The only thing I want to say is those few times when Sherry actually put some numbers, some what appear to be a spreadsheet out there on our webpage on things the county is looking at, the spreadsheet doesn't make sense. The software, either the individual inputting the data doesn't know how to use the software, or the software needs to be updated, because you can't discern from the numbers that are there what's coming in and what's going out. And thank you for being here, by the way.
Sure.
He's talking about the check register that's in the weekly BOCC package.
Mhm.
Yes,
Headings on it's a list basically, and you have to look at it really close.
So, Sherry, I'll try to get you each department, like I'm 119.
Mhm.
If you see anything 119 dash, that's
Mhm.
Register of Deeds. And every department has their assignments. So if you see that number, you can kind of know which department is
Okay.
spending the money. Thank you so much for all your questions. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
Anytime.
Out of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to stop the recording here.